Hello and welcome to NZONE Focus. I'm Davina William. Young people who have made bad choices while driving are being given the opportunity firsthand to see some of the results that can come from those decisions. Visiting a spinal unit, being cut out of a badly damaged car, and hearing from the parents of teenagers who've died in car crashes are just some of the ways that are helping young people adopt a much more disciplined approach to their driving. These experiences come through the Right Track program being delivered by John and Helen Finch of the EDUK8 Trust. And the goal is for first-time young offenders to get to the point where they really understand the consequences of dangerous driving. One of the key factors in the program is the ability for youths to say no to peer pressure or to situations where they may be encouraged to drive dangerously. Alan Lee has the story.
Every year there are roughly 400 fatal traffic crashes. Council estimates put the total cost of each of those fatal accidents to the country at around $2 million per accident. That comes to not far short of $1 billion a year. The top killer of our young people is car crashes. In the 5 years between 2003 and 2008, there were 445 deaths of 15 to 19-year-olds in vehicle crashes. And for every fatality, there are around 6 serious and 17 moderate injuries. Why are we failing our teenagers?
Because the problem is inherent in all societies where vehicles are a major part of what's going on.
John Finch has devised a new approach.
Realised very quickly that if we wanted to make a change, we had to approach it from a learning perspective rather than a penalty.
For many teenagers, their driving misdeeds end up here, in the cells beneath one of New Zealand's courts. They're the lucky ones. They haven't ended up in a hospital, or worse, in a morgue. These young people, though, have not, on this occasion at least, been arrested by the police. They're here in the grim cell block beneath Auckland District Court to experience what it's like if they do fall foul of the law.
If there's a fight down here, if you don't like your fellow prisoners, we will wait until you stop.
The police on duty make sure the experience is as authentic as possible.
The reality is that a lot of the young people and their families would have never been through that. They may have come via alternative action plan or through family group conference, or they may have been referred through a police youth aid officer. So actually the reality of being in a court and being in a jail cell is a huge change, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the program builds from that point through a number of the sessions, through the 6 sessions, which just expose them to a whole range of experiences and enables them to learn, really.
This is John and Helen Finch's plan. Provide the young people with the tools to make sensible decisions about what they do, and that involves some pretty hands-on experience.
I consulted with kids and said, why are you driving drunk? Why are you driving fast? Why are you doing this? I said, oh, because we like it, bro, you know, and it gives us a buzz and da-da-da. And I said, so why don't you stop? If you know it's going to end tragically, why don't you stop? Why, you know? So there was this huge gap between perception, because you got the films of the hero driving at 900 miles an hour, doing 58 turnovers in a big crash and coming out with a little cut above his head, you know, and shaking it off. And so there's a huge difference between perception and reality. Having asked the kids what would work, it became very clear that there were a number of strategies that we employ in New Zealand that have limited effect. And so the journey began to actually start trying to devise a program that would have an impact.
And after the referral's been made by whichever agency it is, and I've made contact with them and had a chat with them and read the referral form and see that they're a fit to what we're doing, Then they come along and the first session is at one of the district courts in whichever area of Auckland that we're running it. And there they're going to have a mock court. They're going to visit the jails. One of them will be left in the jail, and then they're brought up and they become the person who's on trial. And the judge will read through a situation, a sentence, and it's based on something that's really happened. But obviously, some of the details have been changed.
It isn't PlayStation, it's actually real. All right, this sentencing, this event, took place. The boy got 6 years. These are real lawyers. These are real police people. This is a real judge. This is a real courtroom. So much of the stuff we do today is on PlayStation, is on Xbox, is on the TV, is on video, is on games, and all that sort of stuff. The hero
research shows that if you just do shock, 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 actually it just all wears off and it doesn't become shocking anymore. So what we have is a balanced approach. I mean, it's an educational program and it's a journey, actually. And the journey is basically, if you get into trouble with the law, this is where you're going to start your journey, and this is where the very strong likelihood is that you're going to end up at the end of the program.
As part of the first meeting of the course, one of the learners is treated exactly like an offender. He's taken to a holding cell ahead of his appearance in the dock. Normal procedure is for belt and shoes to be removed.
Oh, just kick your shoes off, mate. Oh. Jump in, have a seat, come and get your shoulder.
Has he got a belt on?
Get a belt? Yeah, take your belt off as well, mate. You have bracelets or full stitch?
No, that's fine.
That's cool. Okay.
He's got nothing to hang himself.
That's the main thing.
And then after cooling his heels for a while, he's taken up the back stairs to appear in the dock, again exactly as if he was an actual offender. After the break, the learners find out about what it's like to be sentenced, and the reality of a car crash is brought home in dramatic fashion. The Right Track is an initiative aimed at young drivers who've got into trouble, trying to prevent them becoming one of this country's dismal accident statistics. Devised by John and Helen Finch, the course introduces learners to the reality of a car crash and the consequences in court. At the very first session, they're put in cells, hauled into the dock, and experience what it's like to be up before a judge, including the trauma of a victim impact statement.
David was 15 years old with his whole life ahead of him. He told us he was going out to a party and we thought David would be in good hands. Little did we know what would happen on this night. The police have told us you had been drinking before you got in and drove the car with David and 2 other friends in the car with you.
One of the things we looked at as educationalists was how do people learn? Me, I'm a pull apart, put together sort of person. Other people learn chalk and talk. Other people will learn verbally. And all of us learn through a combination of those things. Virtually all the programs that are offered throughout the world are one-dimensional. So you go into a room, you watch the video, you get told off by the policeman, you do this, da-da-da. And if you learn in that way, then it's probably going to get to you. But if you don't learn in that way, you haven't learned anything at all. So one of the purposes of design of the program was to ensure that during the program we would have activities that would definitely grab hold of your learning style. And for most of our kids, they're kinesthetic, they're experiential, they want to be doing things, and so we've made a lot of the program very active.
What do you all expect to learn tonight?
At a later session, the group visits a fire station. This is where they experience the true horror of a car accident. Kumeu Senior Station Officer Simon Shields starts their evening off with a no-holds-barred description of some of the accident scenes he's attended.
So we've gone through the causes of car accidents: alcohol and drugs. They slow your reactions. Is that right? Affects your concentration. Death to us is fast, it's grisly, and it's almost always a tragedy, okay? Turning out at car accidents and firefighting, it strips away any illusions that you might have about death, and it can happen in an infinite number of ways. Whether you get thrown out of a car and die, whether you get squashed or you get a head injury and you die later, there's a lot of ways you can die. And one thing it is really, we don't go to an accident where someone holds their hand and says, "Give my love to mum," and they die, or "Tell my wife I love her." It's not like that. It's bloody, it's gutsy, and it's just not like you see on TV. "Oh, tell my kids I love them." It just doesn't happen.
But what really gets everyone's attention is in the yard outside, a staged crash scene with two real cars.
Something that's smashed in like this. It hasn't been too bad because normally there'd be blood all over the inside if it was bad, over the steering wheel and all over here. So can't see any in there, so it's quite good. So what we'll do is we'll get them in there, goggles on. Probably the big fella might want to go in last. There's room in there under the glove box to get your legs in the front there. I think someone can just get in that way.
Some of the learners have to crawl inside the car to experience what it's like to be cut out using the Jaws of Life rescue device.
B pillar rip, then cut the roof. B pillar rip, then cut the roof. You're going to hear a lot of bangs and crashes, guys, all right? Spreading, wait for the bang, keep going.
Cutting.
Keep going.
Ready.
Keep going, stop. How much time we got? 4 minutes, here we go.
When we look at the emotional impact, I shall always remember that time early on, about program 3, when we take the kids bush and I do risk management with them. And we had some pretty hard kids and hard families. And as we're going into the bush on a bit of a walk, I turn around to a father who's in front of me and say to him, "So how's it going then with so-and-so and so?" And he turns around to me and he says, "Doesn't really matter, does it?" Okay. I said, "Like to expand a little, you know?" He said, "Well, it doesn't really matter what you're doing." All right. He said, "Listen, mate, I haven't talked to my son for 3 years, and the night before last, we sat down, had a cup of tea and talked about this stuff you're showing us." He said, "Doesn't matter what you're doing, we've started to get our relationship back."
To break a window, we've got to put a hole in the middle of it for us to start. This saw cuts on the pull. So it's not a saw where you normally saw it cuts on the push. This cuts when you pull it towards you. So there's two ways we can do it. We can cut it like that, which is quite slow, but if we break it all the way along, and then cut from hole to hole, see, it's quite quick. That gives them a chance to cut through there with the cutters.
Across the world, we have lost sight of our responsibility towards educating people about what happens in vehicles. So the Nintendos and the PlayStations and everything like that create a huge warped sense of reality, which is very hard to realise it isn't real when you've been on the TV and on the games since you're about 2 or 3. The film industry, the TV industry, all those things have a responsibility to actually ensure that young people know that that actually doesn't happen. Because we're breeding huge generations of people who absolutely believe that that's exactly what happens. And of course it doesn't. And when they meet the people who are involved in road traffic collisions and the devastation that's created, that's then when the reality starts to set in.
Just relax. Yeah, keep going.
Keep going.
Just keep going. Let the tool do the work, mate. You're right. It's fine. Keep going. Just keep going. Keep going. Let the tool. Just go with the tool.
In a moment, the group learns why Gone in 60 Seconds has a more sinister meaning when it comes to car crashes. Young people, particularly young men, think they are invincible. The government went so far as to introduce new legislation in a bid to keep boy racers off our streets. But if you listen quietly in the early hours of a Saturday morning in many urban areas, there's a good chance you'll hear screeching brakes as some teen somewhere puts his souped-up car through its paces. Perhaps it's not surprising that male drivers between the ages of 17 and 20 are 10 times more likely to die in a crash than those aged between 35 and 54. These fire service pictures are from a presentation that's part of The Right Track, a course for young people who've been identified as a high-risk group. It aims to show them what the true consequences of bad driving are. It was devised by educationalists John and Helen Finch to bring home the real facts.
But the most important thing, and you'll see these guys, and you'll be dressed tonight in the fire safety gear, you must take care of your own safety first.
And get you out of a car when you're trapped.
One of the most startling demonstrations in the course takes place at a fire station. It's not just young drivers, it's any driver who needs to see just how quickly a car which catches fire after a crash becomes an inferno. In 60 seconds, this car had become an unyielding, inescapable death trap. In this case, the fire appliance only had to travel from the front of the fire station to the back. In real life, that 60 seconds would stretch to several minutes.
One of the key components of the program is about choice, and it's about decisions, and how making this choice goes this way and making this choice goes this way. And so by being able to apply that logic to everyday life, they had made better choices. And we see that in the way the young person arrives at the end of the program. At the beginning of the program, it's all the attitude, and it's all the scruffy, and it's the hair, and it's the and at the end of the program, they've had haircuts, they're wearing smarter clothes. We don't talk about any of it, but it just, the change when you see a wizened old copper doing the final police interview at the end, and he has this same person in front of him that was there 4 weeks previously, and goes, is this the same kid? Is this the same bloke?
So the $64 million question, does it actually work?
So the programme is evaluated independently by New Zealand Police. Learners who have graduated, been through the programme successfully, they're tracked. And all the learners are aware of that. And initially they were tracked up to a year, and then the police got really excited and said, can we track them for over a year, and can we track them against other offending? And the latest results that we've had is that we're tracking around about 80%, both for driving, so non-offending, for driving-related offences, and also, so round about the same for other kinds of offending.
We didn't realise it when we first started. I mean, we were asked to design a driving program, for want of a better word, but when the police came back to us with the statistics, they were so excited, weren't they? Because they said, this is incredible. Again, because they haven't offended doing the burglaries or the thefts or all those things, which they had been doing previously. It's almost as if the program had taught them some form, apart from the major attitudinal change in terms of driving behaviours, it actually had created some kind of systemic social conscience, which had enabled them to make better decisions. From our perspective, I think what we decided very early on was that we had stumbled across something that was pretty life-changing for us in terms of being able to make this huge difference to New Zealand society. Now, the issues around that concern the fact that we have to spend so much time trying to find money to fund the darn thing. And what we're trying to do, and the people that we work with are amazing. The judges, the Tony Fitzgerald, the Lisa Tremewans, the New Zealand Police, New Zealand Fire Service, St John Ambulance, people like Ros and Martin Williams at Williams Funeral Service, Southern District Zone. These are incredible people who know that there's a huge issue, and that what we need to do is, whether it's central government or whether it becomes a political topic, is actually, well, funnily enough, Stephen Joyce, Transport Minister, only this year released the research that shows that New Zealand has a huge problem in the 15 to 24-year-old age group with terrible things, high-risk group on New Zealand roads. We're killing each other, we're doing this, we're doing that. And yet, there is no funding for programs that have an answer to it. So where are we coming from? Well, we just want to make this huge difference with all these incredible people so that New Zealand families aren't continuing to suffer these horrendous tragedies.
It affects families, eh? No mum, no child.